صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يوم نطوي السماء كطي السجل للكتب كما بدأنا أول خلق نعيده وعدا علينا إنا كنا فاعلين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Although the Holy Quran has been descended in the Arabian Peninsula and was among the Arabs, but it was never been meant to be for them alone. Rather, it is for the whole generations, for everybody, regardless of the time and place. It's for all the generations to come afterward, until the end of history. It is so inclusive. It is meant to be a book of guidance, a book that we call it today a constitution. This is how we guide every human, that guides every human being. According to an author who says that, and of course this author was not a Muslim, he says that if you look at the monotheistic religions, you will see that Islam is the most practical and most viable religion, more than any other religions. And he says why? He says if you look, for example, go to the Jews in Judaism and ask them, how do you verify that you have a connection with God, a divine connection? The answer is that it's through our prophets. Look at the prophets, and the prophet is descended from God. He's coming from God as a messenger. Therefore, we have a connection to the divine source. You tell them, what is it? Verify this. For example, they say, Prophet Moses. Okay, how do you verify that Prophet Moses was truly a prophet and messenger of God? They tell you, look at the miracles. He had a miracle. A miracle is something that defies the rule of nature. The creator of this nature made the prophet capable to defy the rule of nature. Therefore, any prophet, anyone who can show that he's defying the rule of nature, this person is connected to divine source. You say, beautiful. Show me, what is the miracle of Moses? They tell you, it is the rod, the stick. He will take the stick. This stick, in a matter of seconds, will be changed to a huge and scary serpent. You say, beautiful. When was this? 4,000 years ago. Do you have anything tangible today? No, we don't have anything tangible. It used to be 4,000 years ago when Moses used to show the miracle of God at that time, and people believed in him as a great messenger of God. That's what Muslims also agree. But when was this? That was 4,000 years ago. Go to the Christians, again, pose the same question. Tell them, how do you prove that Jesus Christ is a divine man? They tell you, look at his miracles. What are those miracles? He used to rise the dead, rise people from dead. He used to heal people from sickness. He used to grab a handful of dust and rock, put them together, and they would become birds. But then you would ask the same question. When was this? They tell you 2,000 years ago. Anything tangible now? No, nothing is tangible now. But when you come to Muslims and tell them, how do you verify that your prophet, is connected to the divine source? They tell you, look at this book. This book that we have, how many millions of copies we have? More than 1 billion? We have 1.3 billion Muslims. Is it fair to say for every one Muslim we have one book? If it's too much, then at least for 2 Muslims they have one book. So we basically have about 750 million copies of this great book. They tell you, look at this great book. This is the source of divine. This is the source of miracle for our prophet. Look at it, read it, and find it. Therefore, according to this author, he says that Islam is truly a religion that can demonstrate at any time, at any place, regardless of time and place, that it is connected to a divine source. When they asked the Imam alayhi salam, asked Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, they told him, how come we recite Quran, we see that it is so fresh. Next year we recite the Quran again. Have you ever seen a book, no matter how elegant it is, no matter how beautiful it is? Take any novel. How many times you can read it? 1 time? 2 times? You read Harry Potter 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. But then you will grab the book and throw it away. But Quran, for 1400 years, at least it is recited every year. Every single year, during Ramadan, most Muslims, have the opportunity to recite it. When you recite Quran, you see it as a fresh. So they asked the Imam, how come is it a fresh? The Imam had this beautiful answer. He said, because it is narrated not only for you guys. It is narrated for the entire generations. All generations has to take, benefit from this Quran. I take my share, you take your share, you take your share. The scholar, in the cemetery take his share. The philosopher take his share. The scientist in the lab take his share. And that is the source of, miracle of Quran. This is how we say Quran is miraculous in nature. Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam has very elegant saying. He says that لو مات ما بين الشرق والغرب لما استوحشت بعد أن يكون القرآن معي. He says that if the entire population died, I would never feel alone. I would never feel lonely. As long as I have this great book, the Quran, with me. You can take anything, any part from Quran for any reason, and it matches. Here is a hadith from the Prophet. It says, خُذْ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا شِئْتَ لِمَا شِئْتَ. For any reason you want, take any part. You want to start from the beginning, from Surah Al-Hamd, or you want to start from Surah Al-Ikhlas. For any reason you want it, take it, and you will see it is very adapted. It works very beautifully. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam tells his student and cousin Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas was amazed at the amount of knowledge that Ali ibn Abi Talib used to have. One day, he told Ali ibn Abi Talib, teach me the translation of Quran. Tafsir, the interpretation of Quran. Ali ibn Abi Talib told him, okay, after Salat al-Isha, we meet at the masjid. He said, no problem. Ali ibn Abi Talib sat down and explained to him the translation of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Only Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. How long did it take? He kept talking and talking and talking until the mu'adhin called for the morning prayers. Ibn Abbas was tired. He told him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, how much information you have? What is this? Look at what Ali ibn Abi Talib says. He says, Ya Ibn Abbas, thank you. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Said, Ya Ibn Abbas, لو شئت لأوقرت لك حمل 70 بعير في تفسير باء بسم الله. You know what حمل 70 بعير? Meaning a load of 70 camels. Meaning that you go to U-Haul, you've seen the U-Haul trucks? You hire 70 U-Haul trucks and fill them to top with textbooks. This is only an explanation of ba, the letter ba of Bismillah. How much knowledge you can exert from Quran. That's why we say Quran is a miraculous. It's a miracle of Islam. It's a miracle of our Prophet. You can use it for anything you want. It is meant to be the constitution. It is meant to be the rule of law for everyone. But unfortunately, Muslims have relegated Quran only to be a blessing commodity. We only use it in the calligraphy. Look at the Husayniyat and Masajid. You see only the beautiful writing of Quran has ornamented our Masajid and Husayniyat. When we step outside from our home, we kiss the Quran and we go underneath it a few times. Or when we want to get married, we make it a dowry. But other than that, no. You go every day. If you don't believe me, just go right now. After the lecture, go back home and look at the amount of dust that sits in our Quran. We never open it. We never even recite it. In fact, it is not meant to be recited. It is meant to be adopted, to be used. Ali ibn Abi Talib, on the last day of his life, he gathered all his children and told them this, Allah, Allah fil Quran. Be careful, hold this book. But he didn't tell them recite it. What did he tell them? لا يسبقكم بالعمل به غيركم. Don't allow other people to adopt Quran, to make it as their constitution, to work by Quran. Otherwise, you will be at loss. Quran is meant to be used. It meant to be adopted. We say that Quran is a healing, meaning that we can get healing from Quran. That's what Quran itself says. But many of us don't see this. Why? Do you know why? When you get sick and you go to the doctor, what does the doctor do? You write a prescription. When he gives you the prescription, what do you do with the prescription? Do you hold the prescription and say, erythromycin, erythromycin, erythromycin? Or you go to the pharmacist. The pharmacist will change this prescription to what? To drugs. You take the drugs, at that time you will be healed. What did you do? You adopted the prescription. You acted upon the prescription. At that time, you saw the result. But Quran, we only keep it sometimes for mindless recitation when somebody dies. One guy used to say that when I walk in my neighborhood, and all of a sudden I hear someone is reciting Quran, I say, God forbid, who died? Somebody must have been dead. Otherwise, nobody cares to recite Quran. We don't care much about Quran. We don't trust Quran. We don't even trust God's word. We believe in God, but trust, not much. We trust the words of the doctor. If the doctor tells you, here's 3 pills, you need to take 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 before bedtime. God forbid if you don't follow this. No. Just, he said, right before bedtime. If I don't do this, maybe Armageddon will take place. I'll be changed to a frog. This is how we care about that, with all due respect to doctors. They're wonderful people. They heal people. But my point, when God tells me something, I don't listen. I don't trust. But when other people tell me, professionals, I trust them. Why? And I call myself Muslim. We only say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah by words as a belief. But as a trust, we don't have much trust. Last year, I was in the YMA, and I'll tell you this story. After I finished my talk, which was about marriage, one gentleman came to me and told me, look, we have a son, he's 20 years old. I have allocated some money for him to get married. But my wife here, she refuses. She says, no. I told her, why, Hajj? She said, well, how come? Only a few $1,000s. What kind of life he will make with this? He has to grow up, he has to finish college, he has to find a job. Then once he stands up on his feet, at that time, he is ready to get married. I told her, Hajjah, with all due respect, practically you're telling me that you are mushrik, you don't believe in Quran. She was jolted and told me, why? I said, look at Quran. Quran says, when a suitable man comes to your daughter, or your son has reached a suitable age, and he's a good person, a decent person, make him get married. Don't be afraid that this guy doesn't have money. God himself has a promise to you. Imagine you go to a supermarket. Someone comes and tells you, this is my credit card. Buy as much as you want. Wouldn't you go and buy as much as you want? And this is only one person. What about if God is tells you, go, get married. إِنْ يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاء يُغْنِهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Don't be afraid. I am the one who's taken responsibility. I am giving you pledge. Does God lie? No. But why we don't do it? Because we don't have a trust in God. I said this story that I'm going to tell it to you last year in the YMA. But believe me, I have to repeat it here. Why? Because you can make it a lesson. Ever since I've heard this story, it has been a lesson for me. Always, when I am in such kind of situation, I revert to this story. The story is a pure fiction. It is not real. But the morale, the spirit of the story is very real. It is befitting for us. They say, maybe some of you already have heard this. They say that a mountain climber used to go and climb mountains. Next to his, and I have to make it very short, because I'm reading out of the script and my time is only 50 minutes. Maulana, would you give me 5 more minutes if it's possible? Sayyid Khalil, is that okay with you? Yeah? Okay, Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. This mountain climber used to go, he was very daring, very strong, very energetic, would go to the summits of the mountains by himself. Close to his village, there used to be a huge mountain. Very, big mountain, and the summit on the high altitude. This man decided one dark night in the middle of February, when the temperature is below zero, freezing temperature, and in time that is completely dark, he chose the first of the lunar month, where there's not even, a full moon, that he cannot see. Without telling anybody, not his family, not his friend, he took his backpack with a rope, and then those screws that they nail on the, on the mountain, and he took the road and went all the way to this mountain to go to the summit. As he did, they do the nailing and then they put the rope. The rope goes through their backpack, so it's holding them in case they fell from the cliff. And he kept doing this and going all the way up, getting close to the mountain, to the summit. And at that time it was dark, the wind was blowing, the temperature is below zero. All of a sudden, a strong wind comes and throws him from the top of the mountain. He comes down, free fall, to the valley of this mountain. Of course, very dark. But he keeps going until the rope holds him back, grabs him. So now he's stranded in the middle of this mountain, dark, cold, freezing temperature, and nobody's with him. And his cell phone is at home, even if he had the cell phone doesn't work in the mountains. There is no reception. So he standeth there. If he stays like this for 30 minutes, he's dead, completely dead. Where does he go? Whom should he call? At that time he realizes that he should call God. He started screaming, God! Of course he hears the echo. After so many times, all of a sudden he heard a noise saying, yes, John, I'm God. He said, okay, God, thank you very much. Help me. He said, should I help you? Where have you been? I have been calling you for 40 years. Where are you? He said, well, forgive me. Now I really need you. He said, I have been calling you so many times. I wanted you. I wanted your call, but you never listened. He said, look, I'll be happy to change. Help me with this and I will change. He said, no, I cannot help you. Why? Because you don't trust me. You don't have a trust in me. He said, promise you, this time I will trust you. Just you save me from this, then, whatever you say I will follow. He said, no, you're lying. He said, believe me, I swear by you that I'm not lying. He said, you're not lying? If you say so, then he grabbed the knife, in your pocket, cut out the rope. He said, well, you think I'm crazy? I'm stranded here. This is the only option that I have that I'm surviving. You want me to cut off the rope? He said, well, didn't you say that you trust me? If you trust me, cut off this rope. He said, no, I cannot do. He said, okay. If you don't do, then there is no deal. He begged. God told him, listen, this is the only way. This is the only way that you show me as a proof that you really trust me. He said, sorry, God, I cannot do this. Okay. No deal, goodbye. God leaves. And guess what? After 30 minutes, due to coldness and a freezing temperature, this guy dies. The family search for him, the friends search for him. After a couple days, they send, helicopters, they find him. Look at this, brothers and sisters. The whole story lies in this line. They found him dead. They bring him, they wash him and do the mortuaries and everything. But look at the headlines next day. What does the headline says? All the headlines say this. A mountain climber has died while 1 meter above the ground. 1 meter above the ground. If he had cut up the rope, he had saved himself. But why he didn't do it? He didn't trust God. That is exactly fitting upon us, brothers and sisters. We don't trust God. If we adopt Quran, believe me, today Gaza would not suffer as it has been suffering. The Arab nations have not been suffering as we have seen it now. Why? Because we took Quran in our back seat. Before us, the Muslims used to grab Quran in their hand, in one hand Quran, in the other hand their sword. That's why they advanced. They captured the entire continent. But nowadays, we're so backward. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Anyway, there are many things in the Quran. You read the Quran, you can take anything that you see, it is suitable. It's a book of constitution. It's a book of guidance. It's a book of miracles. One of the uses of Quran, it admonishes people. It advises people, warns people, tell them about something that is grave that will take place. What is that? Yawm al-Qiyamah, the hereafter. There are many verses in the Holy Quran that admonish people to watch out, to be careful. There is a day, an imminent day will arrive upon you that will be so disastrous. It will annihilate you. It will remove you. Be careful of that day. There are many verses. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hajj says, يَوْمَ تَرَوْنَهَا تَذْهَلُ كُلُّ مُرْضَعَةٍ عَمَّا أَرْضَعَتْ وَتَضَعُ كُلُّ ذَاتِ حَمْلٍ حَمْلَهَا وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى. Why? وَلَكِنَّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيدٌ. He says, oh people, watch it on a day that a nursing mother will grab her suckling baby and throw it away. A pregnant will drop down her load. People are looking like they're drunk. Why? Not because they're drunk. They're not drunk. وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى. It is the punishment of God is so severe. It's talking about what? About that day. The day of judgment. In another ayah, it says, يَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ. The day that a trumpet will be blown. فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. At that time, everyone, and this is inclusive of the angels, jinns, inns, all, فَفَزِعَ, all are terrified. Those who are in the heavens and those who are on earth. All will be terrified from that day. Showing, terror. Terrifying people. Putting horror inside their hearts. Why? Why would God does this? For a very simple reason, brothers and sisters. A human being, once he finds himself, he's needless. He has the money, he has health, he has insurance, he has power, then he becomes needless. He said, oh, God does not exist. Why do I need to do prayers? I don't need it. I'm having a good job, I have a big mansion, I'm going to my work. I don't need anything. Becomes rebellious. Out of what? Out of ignorance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. Once he sees a bunch of money, some cash, then he says that I am needless. I don't need to have anybody. If I need my money in the account, I have a post, I have my insurance, I have my credit card. I don't need anything. This is how a human being is. A human being is the only creature that has declared himself God. The only creature. Out of all of the creatures that God has created, a human being is the only one who's declared himself to be God. Fir'aun. Fir'aun, once he governed Masr, Egypt, he says, قَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. A claim that even Shaitan, the devil himself, has not made. Shaitan, the devil, when he challenges God, he tells him that I will lure the people. What does he say? He swears by the glory of God. He says, وَعِزَّتِكَ لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُ. He considers himself a servant of God, a slave of God. The only entity, the only creature who's so rebellious and consider himself big is a human being. Well, how you tame this a human being? You tame him with such kind of verses. Terrify him. Warn him. Give him a warning sign to be careful. Among those warning signs, brothers and sisters, is the one that I recited at the beginning. It says, يَوْمَ نَطْوِ السَّمَاءَ كَطَيِّ السِّجِلِّ لِلْكُتُبِ. You know what طَيِّ السِّجِلِّ لِلْكُتُبِ? It's meaning that you grab a scroll. Imagine this paper. This is a scroll. And then you grab it and scroll it down. Like this. This is how it happens. When you do this one, you're scrolling the letter. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, that you're rolling the entire heavens. يَوْمَ نَطْوِ السَّمَاءَ كَطَيِّ السِّجِلِّ لِلْكُتُبِ. Besides being a warning, admonishment for us, this particular ayah has a miraculous nature. In which side? In a scientific scope. With your permission, brothers and sisters, I will take a few minutes to talk about the miraculous nature of a scientific aspect of this ayah after your big and loud salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we will roll up the heavens. What does it mean? Nowadays, the scientists have made this theory. It's a theory, of course. Theory meaning that it is so short of facts. The scientists have said this, that the ultimate destiny of this universe, when it comes to collapse, they call it this term. They say it is a big crunch. What does it mean? meaning that the entire universe will implode, will recollapse and gets back to its original state. Completely. Everything, matters, energies, everything will come to collapse and implode within itself and contract to give you tiny little spots. The entire universe will be contracted so much to give you tiny little spot. This is called the Big Crunch. Is there an evidence for Big Crunch? Yes, there is an evidence. What is the evidence? Today scientists point to this fact. It's something that is called the black hole. What is a black hole? A black hole is a space in it's a region in the space, in every galaxy. Every galaxy that you will see, you see that there is a space, a specific space in that galaxy that would not allow anything to get out of it. Once something, some matter, some light, some star, some planet, anything gets drawn in this black hole will be sucked in and never gets out completely. It is gone. Now, what is the volume of this black hole? They don't know. It has a mass, but does not have a volume. They don't know how big it is. But they know only one thing, that it has a boundary. This boundary is called event horizon. Once an object gets to its proximity, it will be sucked in due to its gravitation effect. It gets it in and it swirls down, and gets to the bottom of the black hole. Nothing will get out, even light. That's why they call it black. It's complete black, complete darkness, meaning that even light cannot get out of the black hole. Why? Due to its immense gravity. It has so much gravity that it quenches everything. When a star comes to its end, getting closer to the event horizon, which is a boundary of this black hole, it gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer until it becomes nothing completely. What happens? It crunches, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, until it becomes a tiny little dot. Now scientists say this. They say it reaches a point that is called a point of singularity. What is point of singularity? It says that when time, space, and energy become undefined, meaning they converge to be one. There is no time, there is no space, and there is no energy, there is no matter. In a tiny little spot. This is what the scientists have said. Now, if you take this one and, compare it to the ayah, what the ayah is saying, says, يَوْمَ نَطْوِي السَّمَاءَ كَطَيِّ السِّجِلِّ لِلْكُتُبِ. This is one part. The second part is even more amazing. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, كَمَا بَدَأْنَا أَوَّلَ خَلْقٍ نُعِيدُهُ. In the same way that we have originated this universe, we will bring it back to its own, we will rewind it to its own original state. Is that a miracle? Yes, that is also a miracle. What? It is talking about another phenomenon that is called Big Bang. You've heard of Big Bang? What is Big Bang? Very simply, I will keep it in a very simple term, so I don't want to, to get you bogged down with the terminologies or with some scientific fact. I will explain it after your big and loud salawat. Big Bang Theory, again, it's based on scientific data and finding that says the universe has originated, has expanded from that tiny little spot that I was talking about. All of a sudden, there was a huge explosion. The universe has expanded to its current state. How big is the universe? Scientists tell you that nowadays they estimate the size of this universe to be 20 billion years of light. You know what's 20 billion light years? The speed of light is 300 kilometers per second. Meaning that the speed of light has to go 20 billion years Now, if you want to transfer this to distance, to kilometers, you need to take 300, multiply it by 60 to get it what? In minutes. Then take the 300 times 60, again, multiply it by 24, multiply it by another 60 to get it in 1 hour. Then multiply it by 24, that will get it in 1 day. Then multiply it by 365, that will give you the distance in 1 year. Now multiply this in 20 billion. Then you will find out the distance of this universe. This distance, this size of universe is started from tiny, little, small point that was so dense and energetic, very hot, extremely hot, beyond recognition. All of a sudden, it expanded. Now, why is this a miracle? Because it proves the majesty, the omnipresence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? You see, scientists at the beginning of this century, and those who were atheists, and those students who go to college, those college level students who are majoring in science, they know what I'm talking about. In science, you don't find many people who believe in God. And I will tell you why in a second. They reject the notion, of having a creator of this universe. They tell you it's all spontaneous. It just happened by itself. Now, at the beginning of the last century, the scientists would say this universe used to be this way. It has never been created, nor it will be destroyed. It is just like this, in a state called steady state universe. From the very, very primordial time until eternal time, it will stay like this. Why do they say this? Do you know why? So they can get the benefit of doubt, meaning that no one would challenge them to tell them who has created it. When they say that it was like this, means that there is no creator. But if they say that it is an origin, it has an origin, what comes next? The logical question, how did it come? Who has made it? The question, this is a very logical question, which is called the causality law. For anything, there must be a cause. You use this law in science. You use it in philosophy. You use it in computer science. You always ask this question, what was the reason? How did it start? So the atheists and scientists would have this idea that this universe was like this from the very, very primordial time. It was like this one. Therefore, the notion of a creator is funny. You don't need to believe that someone has created this universe, because this universe will stay like this. It never get destroyed, nor it gets created like this one. In 1929, Edwin Hubble, a physicist, dealt a serious blow or a fatal blow to those atheists, to those notions. Why? Because he accurately proved that this universe had an origin. How? He measured the rate that the galaxies, other galaxies, are receding from us, taking part, going, farther and farther away. What does it mean when something is going farther and farther away? Meaning at one point of time they were together. Then they started to separate. So after so many studies, he came to say that the universe was in a single spot. Then things started to separate. The galaxies started to take different directions and separated from each other. Every data afterward came to prove this fact. So far, the Big Bang theory does not have any objection. There is nothing that can object or invalidate this theory. That was a fatal blow to those atheists. Because once you say that this universe had an origin, then how did it originate? Who has created this universe? Plus, it was a point of singularity. Time, space, and energy were all in one spot. It must be something, some superpower, who's not material, who's not energy, who's not time and space, has it triggered this expansion. And all of a sudden, the universe has expanded. Are you with me so far? Are you with me? What is your salawat then? I need a bigger salawat to continue. They say that 14 billion years ago, this thing has happened. The universe has expanded. Now, the atheists still say this, okay, 50-50, yet this universe is running his own affair. It is aimless. It doesn't have any objectivity. It doesn't have any aim. Only the laws of probability that govern this universe. Again, another scientific fact, but this time I will keep it very simple. Please don't be scared. Back in the 70s, a physicist, his name is Brandon Carter. He was an astrophysicist, an Australian one, who came up with this notion. After so many studies, he put his results in a conference, in a meeting, which says that this universe has a purpose. It is not aimless. It didn't come by coincidence. Even if it had come by coincidence, the way it is now, it shows that it's meant to have a life, a conscious life. If you say this, what does it mean? It means someone has a plan for it. Someone has originated this one. Now he showed some of those data. I will just talk about 2 or 3 of them. But provided you understand, if you don't, then I will skip. I will give you one piece of evidence. The first evidence, when you look at things nowadays, everywhere, you see people, you see walls, you see this microphone, you see materials. But the building blocks of those materials are elements. We have 104 elements that make up the entire world, from the human being to animals to the objects and everything. Those 104 elements, if you go to those elements, those atoms, and break them, you see they also have some particles in them. Like what? Like protons, neutrons, electrons. Anyway, let's call them particles. Now, when the universe expanded, we had those particles also to expand. All of a sudden, the universe cooled down, so they settled. Now, when they settled, we have 2 kinds of particles. One is a positive particle, the other one is a negative particle. They're exactly identical. The difference in their charge, positive, negative. We call them particles and antiparticles. Now, if they collide with each other, they destroy each other. Now, once the universe cooled down, those particles settle down, colliding with each other. Usually, they destroy each other. If they destroy each other, meaning nothing will stay. The universe has to be annihilated. Nothing should be there. If this were spontaneous, and those particles and antiparticles are in equal amounts, and they collapse with each other, destroy each other, meaning you don't see any matter. But we see this universe. How come? The scientists came to realize that for every 1 billion antiparticles, there is 1,000,000,001 particles. Meaning if you put them next to each other, out of 1 billion, there is 1 extra particle. That extra particle has constituted this universe. How many billions came? We don't know. But they came so much, and they made this universe. Logic should say, if this is spontaneous, there should be symmetry between positive and the negative particles. But why there is no symmetry? Why there is 1 particle more than antiparticle? So far, so good? I will give you an easier example. Take, for example, water. Water in room temperature is liquid. When you put it in the freezer, what happens? It becomes solid. It freezes out. Now imagine you go back home and you want to drink some Coke. You grab the ice in the freezer, you put it in this cup. What happens to the ice? The ice melts, but before it melts, it floats on the water, right? Have you seen it's flowing? It floats. It doesn't go in the bottom of the cup. Have you ever asked yourself why? Water is the only non-metallic substance that the solid of it always floats on the liquid. For example, take oil. If you grab oil, of course your freezers at home, and don't try this at home, your freezers at home are unable to solidify liquid of the oil. But if you go, for example, to a scientific laboratory at minus 80 degrees, minus 120, you put oil, you will see it solidifies. It becomes ice. But when it becomes ice, how does it become ice? It becomes ice from bottom to top. Only water, that ice becomes, the water becomes solidified, or ice from top to bottom. The ice always floats on the water. Why? Because it has less density. And this only applies to water. Have you asked yourself why? If happen to be that ice or the water becomes solid or icy from bottom to top, no one of us would ever to live. You would not see any living animal, any living thing could ever, exist. Why? Look at the oceans. If the oceans would solidify and become icy from the bottom, meaning that all the fish, all the living things inside the water have to what? Have to die. Now Darwin came to say that life originated from water. Therefore, if ice had solidified from bottom, there shouldn't be any life. Why? Who made it like this one? Isn't this a purpose? Isn't this someone has a plan for this, that only exception is water, other liquids, they can. They will solidify from bottom to top, except water. Why? This tells you that this life has a purpose. It has to have a creator. Are you with me so far? صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I will take 5 more minutes and inshallah I will finish. Now you would ask, you will tell me, you're the junior scientist, baby scientists, know this fact. Why those scientists at Ann Arbor, those people at Harvard, those people at UCLA, why they don't recognize this? Still they are atheists. They don't believe in this. Either you're not telling the truth, or there's something wrong with their brain. Which one is it? I will tell you very quickly. Brothers and sisters, Europe and West went through an era that is called the Dark Ages. You know what the Dark Ages? Dark Ages started from the 5th century all the way to 11th century. More than 5 centuries. Europe, the West, lived in total darkness. They used to believe in superstition, in myth, no knowledge, no science, no social coherence, social chaos, repression, killing, superstition. All of those for 5 centuries. That's why they call it the Dark Ages. Do you know who was the champion of the Dark Ages? The champion of the Dark Ages was the church. The church, under the name of God, would govern. Anybody would say something, they would tell him, you are heretic. You're not supposed to say things like this. Only the Pope and the monastery and the church was allowed to exert knowledge. Any other person would come and say, this is my finding, this is what I have found, they reject. Not only they would reject him, they would grab him and put him to fire. They will burn him alive. That's why they used to call it the Dark Ages. It was a biggest threat to the civilization. Where was this? This was in Europe. Championed by the church. Any scientist would come, they would tell him, you are heretic. You have to be dead, burned alive, or you repent. Many of those poor scientists would repent. They say, okay, astaghfirullah, I will not do it again. And then they would set him free. In addition to this, the corruption of the church, the financial corruption. You have made a sin? Go to the priest. The priest, write me a check. How much is the check? $10,000? Okay, you're forgiven. You're going to the heaven. You've heard of the indulgence? The church would write indulgence for poor people for their mistake. They would consider themselves, they are the medium between God and people. No one was allowed to exert anything from his own. They had monopoly on the knowledge, on science, on intellect. The brain was incarcerated. No one could say anything. In addition to the corruption, to moral corruption. I'm not going to be talking about moral corruption, but I allude you to what you hear in the news. You know, between 2006 till 2009, the church paid $9 billion as a settlement for what? For the victims of the abuse by the priest. This was a moral corruption. Now, if someone would ask, how did the universe originate? They tell him, by God. You tell him, how does this apple fall from the tree? He tells him, by the act of God. Everything was attributed to God. When they don't have an answer, they say it is God. God, God. People have to obey and follow. Until what time? Science through, came out. All of a sudden, Newton figured out why the apple falls on the ground. He came up with the law of gravity. Then he came up with the first law of Newton, second law of Newton, third law of Newton. Then Copernicus came to say, no, the sun is in the center and the earth is rotating around the sun. Coming to give information about mysteries that people, used not to know. Telling them, this is it, this is it. This has jolted Europe. They said, okay, this is enough. Enough is enough with the church. They have been abusing us mentally, physically, morally, everything. Oh, the church, take your God and go to the church. They rejected everything. Everything that the church has brought, go to the church. That was the problem, brothers and sisters. Yes, the church was corrupt. The church was backward. The church has superstition. But not everything that the church has said was bad. The church had good things. The belief in God, the belief in prophethood, the belief in the hereafter, those are true things. But out of rage, the Europeans, they said, that's enough. You take your God and go away. We don't want to hear anything from you. Why is it so, brothers and sisters? Extremism does not only exist in Islamic world, brothers and sisters. It was originated in Europe. Out of extremism, two things, ignorance and arrogance. What is ignorance? You know what ignorance is? It's not that you don't know nothing. It's not that I miss an information. That is not called ignorance, because there are plenty of things we don't know about it, but we don't call it ignorance. Ignorance is an attitude. It is not a state of being. Meaning that you're presented with fact, you tell him this is a fact, he tells you no, I don't believe in it. I don't accept it. That's what the Prophet, peace be upon him, he would go and tell the people, don't you call me as-Sadiq al-Amin? Abu Sufyan, Abu Jahl, Umayyah, Utbah, Shayba, all used to call the Prophet as-Sadiq al-Amin. He's the honest, he's the trustworthy. Yet, when he brings them with the message, they tell him, you're a big liar. You're a sahir. You're a sorcerer. You're majnoon. Why? Why? This is called ignorance. Unfortunately, the same problem goes to those scientists. If they believe in God, what does it mean? It means that God is the wise. God who puts the rule. Tell them you have to follow the rule. And they don't like to follow the rule. They want to be the master of their own. They want to be answering any entity. They want to be the master of their castle. That's what it is. Because the minute they say that they believe in God, meaning that they have to abide the rule. They have to contain themselves, and they don't like it. That is the reason. And that was the Jahiliyyah, brothers and sisters. That was how people in Arabian Peninsula confronting the Prophet. They knew that he was not lying. He was telling the absolute truth. Yet they would reject it. Why? Because once they accept the message, meaning they have to stop from their habits. They should stop usury. They should stop, humiliating others. They should stop adultery and other things. And things that will run into their own interests. Therefore, they would not follow. That's what exactly Imam Hussein alayhi salam used to face on the day of Ashura. On the day of Ashura, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein wore the turban of his father, of his grandfather. He wore the dress of his grandfather. He grabbed the sword of his grandfather. He took the camel of his grandfather. Why? What to tell them? To tell them, look, I'm the grandson of your prophet. Why are you fighting with me? Don't you know this fact? They said, yes, we know this fact. But we are fighting with you because we hate you and hate your father. That was the answer. First, they wrote for him. The time is ready. The ground is ready. Send us someone. When you come, you will see all fierce fighters, at your disposal. Whom did he send? He sent his cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil, when he entered Kufa, 18,000 people went and pledged allegiance to him. All considered him his master. Muslim ibn Aqil took the pen and wrote a letter to Imam Hussein. Told him, Ya Imam, the time is ready. Everyone is ready. The time is right for you to arrive in Kufa. He dispatched the person to go and give the letter to Imam Hussein. What happened afterward? Ibn Ziyad came. When Ibn Ziyad came, he became divisive, telling the people, if you go with Muslim, first of all, you will be killed. We will stop from giving you allowances. We do such and such and such, frightening people. People started to, take a distance from Muslim. Muslim was in the home of Hani. His host was Hani ibn Urwa. Ibn Ziyad calls upon Hani. He makes a trap for him. He grabs him and then holds him as a prisoner inside the palace of Kufa. Muslim goes to the masjid. There are more than 2,000 with him praying. Once he says Allahu Akbar, in the middle of the prayer, half of them leaves. When he finished the prayers, he turns left and right, he does not see anyone. All have abandoned him. All are gone. He gets out. He walks in the street of Kufa. Where does he go? The host has been taken away, has been taken in custody by Ibn Ziyad. He's so embarrassed to go to the host home, he keeps walking in the streets of Kufa until he finds a noble woman. She's standing at the doorstep of her home. He asks her for a cup of water. Ya amat Allah, hal laki an tasqini ma'an. She brought him the cup of water. He drank the water. Didn't you finish, Ya Abdullah? Yes, I finished. So what are you waiting for? Go to your family. He didn't answer. Where would he go? A lonely man in Kufa, just days before 18,000 have pledged allegiance to him. Where would he go? He stayed there for a while. Again, the woman told him, didn't you finish drinking? I don't allow you, you stay there. He said, Ya Amatullah, I don't have anyone here. I am alone here in this city, in this town. Who are you? I am Muslim ibn Aqil. I am the ambassador of Hussein. She gets him inside. Welcome, Muslim. Welcome, my master. He stayed that night. She brought him food. He didn't eat anything. She made the bed ready. He didn't sleep. Started praying until dawn. By dawn, the forces of Ibn Ziyad, they have recognized his whereabouts. They came after him. They surrounded the entire home. She comes and told him, Muslim, they came after you. He said, don't worry, just give me the sword. He goes out and fights 350 warriors. He kills more than 45 of them. Destroy them. They start using tricks. They use the trick that they didn't even use it against Imam Hussein. What they would do, they would go on the top of the rooftops, they put their arrow and inflame the arrow with fire, and then they throw the arrow against Muslim. Arrow with fires from everywhere. Still, he used to fight with them until they made another trick. They dug a hole and they covered the hole. The horse fell in the hole, and Muslim fell from the horse. They grabbed him, they beat him. One of the soldiers hit him right on his face, cutting his teeth and his mouth. They captured him. As they were walking him, he started weeping and crying. One of them told him, "Why are you crying? You're seeking something. Someone who's seeking what you are seeking should not be crying. Are you afraid of death?" He said, "No, I'm not afraid of death, but I am crying because Imam Hussein is coming. I betrayed Imam Hussein. I betrayed my family. I thought that they are coming in a safe land." They bring him to Ibn Ziyad. He enters upon Ibn Ziyad. They ask him to say salam. He said, "I would not say salam to someone like Ibn Ziyad. He's not my master." Ibn Ziyad told him, "Go take him to the rooftop and behead him." As he goes there, he tells them, "Give me one moment." He performs a prayer. Then he looks toward Medina and says, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Go back from the same way that you came. People of Kufa have betrayed me. Don't stay. Don't come to Kufa. Leave." He sent Ibn Ziyad. He asked someone to be dispatched to go and tell Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein in the middle of the road. Those people come to Imam Hussein and tell him, "We have a bad news for you. Muslim have been dead. He was killed." Imam Hussein goes inside the tents and fights Hamida. Hamida was the daughter of Muslim. He grabs Hamida, kisses her, wipes his hand over her. Hamida looks surprisingly, told him, "Uncle, what has happened to my father? You're treating me like an orphan." He tells her, "I am your father, and my children are your sisters." She said, "Yes, I know, but how sweet when my father puts me in his lap. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم." Please, everybody together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.